So here we are, episode 3,
Well,
third time
hey,
lucky, as they say, of not another mental health podcast, and a little bit different this time. So no live studio audience, just the three amigos, um, but in honour of Mental Health Awareness Week. So between the 15th and the 21st of May this year, and the theme for this year is anxiety. So we had a little chat after the last one, didn't we? And we thought, do you know what? Actually, we've got a couple of guests lined up for the next couple, but we didn't want to miss, this opportunity to really talk about such a massive subject that I think all of us can relate to. So, you know, as usual, zilch prep. We've come on. We're gonna go straight into it. And I suppose I'm going to start by just putting a question out there to you both, really, because we all know I like to talk about me, so we'll save that for a bit. So, what does anxiety mean to you? And what impact can it have on you or those around you?
Go on,
Niall,
Becky.
do you want to? Oh, okay. For me, it is that constant worry. So it's worrying about the smallest little things, right up to the big serious things, and it's like my brain just does not switch off. So I'm constantly in overdrive. I can't focus. Basically, I'm worrying about stuff. I'll worry about stuff like, say, I don't even need to worry about. And then actually, it's quite a recent thing for me, this, probably in the last 6 months or so, maybe 7, is actually where I've gone to the point of catastrophizing. So started worrying about something to the point where it's like, well, if that happens, then that'll happen. And it's like you start down a rabbit hole that you just cannot get back out of. And
Yeah,
before you know it, you're practically hyperventilating. You have no idea what the hell's going on. Absolutely horrendous. And what that means is my poor husband's then got to try and make sense of me, try and keep me calm, and try and logically work through what the hell are you worrying about, essentially.
yeah, and I think
Mm.
that's because a lot of people would say, "Oh, well, I feel anxious about a lot of things," but we all feel anxious about certain things. When we're coming up to exams, that sort of stuff. If you've got an interview with work, whatever it be, there's always that little bit of anxiety that I would probably say is closer to nerves than
Yeah.
anxiety, but it gives a bit of an anxious feeling because you're almost counting down to it. But this, like you say, is something completely different to that, isn't it? This is that almost debilitating,
Mhm.
kind of impact that just stops you doing normal things.
Yep.
I guess
And
it's that fine line between what for me what a worry is and what an anxiety is. It is a worry is something I'd say more practical in that. All right, I'm worried that maybe I might not get a good grade on my test. I'm worried maybe I won't do well in that presentation. Whereas anxiety is taking it into that level of almost irrational
Yeah,
yeah,
to the point it starts off as a worry and then it goes down the spiral staircase into now something that now more hypothetical
yeah,
rather
definitely.
than practical, and it's now the what ifs and the this is going to happen and the catastrophizing and the predicting the future of everything that's going to happen as well. I guess it's that fine line of what for me I guess what feels practical and I can actually do something about and is in front of me and I can see and I can challenge, or what's the what ifs and the going to be that we have no concept of if it's going to happen or not, or if it's in any way reflective of reality, but our head goes there anyway.
Yeah,
it's a really good way of describing it, actually. I know
absolutely.
mine also works back over. So I then start rethinking and working through scenarios, whether it be conversation with friends and family, meetings I've been in, things I've done, and start really over analysing stuff to think, oh, did I say something there that I shouldn't have? And did I come across wrong? And so then basically I just shut myself off from people.
Hey, hey. Boop, boop.
Just shut myself off and just avoid people completely.
Yeah,
Internalize everything.
yeah,
Been
that's the
shut
thing,
down.
isn't it?
Mm.
It's funny how some of these things make you react. I think about anxiety and some of the impacts it has on me, and I think, recently where I made the decision to not run the London Marathon, I remember the day that I was going on a training run and I was like 3-4 kilometers in, and I just had this like horrible feeling, just almost take over. And all the only thing I can explain it as is I was running around a big reservoir and I literally wanted to walk into the water and just let the water take me away, you know. And you know, then it's you do exactly like you say, or I certainly did. I then started going, oh my God, why am I doing this? God, I need to stop. I need to get back to the car. Then I get to the car and then I'm like, right, and on the way home, I made the decision not to run the London Marathon. And I remember thinking, oh my God, what are people going to think? What are people going to say? How do I deal with that? How do I deal with the conversation? And so exactly like you say, you almost then have all these conversations in your head. And before you know it, you've actually stopped functioning. You just normal life, if you like, is just gone for whatever period of time that is. And that was a strange one for me. Because previously, I think anxiety for me and the things that I've felt anxious about um, have been around the fine details of things. So I remember when I was having therapy, and my therapist said, because I wasn't sleeping very well, and she said, if you're thinking about stuff through the night, then write them down. Put them on your smartphone, whatever it be. And I was like, right, okay. And then it took me a week where I was just like overthinking the build up, where I physically couldn't do anything about it because I was going, well, I can't just write it down. What structure is it going to be and what's it going to look like? How am I going to form it? And it honestly took me a week. And I remember I had a journal and I opened the first page and it lifted up a little bit. And I was like, oh, I can't deal with that. So I just opened the first page and it was a flat 2 pages and I wrote 2 pages. And ever since then, I write a journal post every day, but I have to write 2 pages. And people have gone, well, what if you've not got anything to say? And I'm like, well, I'd draw a picture then to get me down to that second page because, like, honestly, I've tried where I've just gone, I haven't really got anything to say now, and I can't move past it, because I then start having that feeling of, oh God, what's going to happen if I don't, and everything else. And it's weird because I quite openly talk about that now, but at the time, I'm thinking, well, I can't tell anybody this because they're going to think I'm really strange. But for me, the anxiety of everything in life was just building up every day, to the point where I just couldn't release it. I couldn't do anything about it. And writing was my way to kind of express some of that, if you like.
Yeah.
It's
Oh, God.
crazy stuff.
Yeah, it is interesting, but it shows how quickly your brain forms new habits in that sense. And that one of the things I learned through the recent work that I've been doing, that I've been sharing with Becky, which I'm wary I could end up going into a 20-minute ramble on, to be fair, of the detail, which I'm not going to, unless it's called for, I guess. But it is what I had to learn within this greater context is to realize how quickly your brain develops a quick neural pathway of a habit. So you're saying that, and it makes complete sense. But from what I've learned as well, my head is also going, but actually, in the process of doing the 2 pages and having to do the 2 pages and you sticking by that regime, is that not also reinforcing the worry as a result of not doing 2 pages in a sense?
Yeah.
Because your brain has learned that habit now, because that's what helped you originally, and that's what
Yes.
got you through that cycle, to the point now where then the worry sets in. If, well, what if I don't do that? So in itself, the habit that got you out of it is also the thing that can almost create the, not saying it will
Yeah.
necessarily go to that point, but can also be the thing that's reinforcing the fact that there's something was wrong to begin with.
No, but that is a really good point because that was happening. So I remember going back, I was talking to my therapist and saying, I'm sitting there, and I'm writing my journal log, and then like I'm sitting there afterwards thinking about everything that I've written, thinking about everything that, So I got to the point where I'd kind of write a page and a half, and then I write positives, and I finish with 2
That's
positive
good.
points to just try and break it, because she was saying, try and sit somewhere else in the house, or because where I was sitting, she was like, you'll always think of that space as where you're thinking about the bad things, or the things that
Your
are
brain
impacting you
associates it.
negatively.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, absolutely did.
Yeah, it is interesting how quickly your brain will fall into those habits and those associations. Yeah, so I'm being very wary here because it's got a
Go for it, Niall.
no,
Go
I don't
for
think I could, because it's no, I'd feel awfully bad. But your second question was also about how does anxiety affect you, and Becky will see this. How anxiety affected me 6 months ago is very, very different to how it affects me now, to the point where today is even testament of that, of what came about. So we just had some news today around a house sale that we're making, where there's a big conflict with land registry now, which has caused a big issue. And 6 months ago, yeah, I would have been crawled up on the floor and underneath the desk and stimming like hellfire, and probably breaking down and shut off for a week. And I'd like to say almost today, I was the one who was able to bring rationale back quite quickly to the, not going to say necessarily to Katie, but as in, like, I was able to almost just diffuse it very naturally and go with it. And now, yeah, there's a little bit of an annoyance there, but what I've learned about the human brain and the approach I've had to take has just taught me how to deal with anxiety, is just in a totally different way.
I was just going to say that, though. How have you found that? What's the difference between 6 months ago and now, then, for you to be able to do that?
It's incredible. I mean, one of them I won't hesitate to say is medication that allowed me to be open to it. So I was started on fluoxetine on top of my ADHD and autism stuff, which I would say allowed me to be perceptive to it where I usually wouldn't have.
Yeah.
But yeah, what I learned was it's kind of a cross of CBT and ACT, and ACT is acceptance and commitment therapy. They're very, very closely interlined. Interweaved almost, but basically, if you want to get over a fear, a phobia, say whatever phobia you've got, whatever fear you have, what do you know, whether you're going to do it or not, but what do you know scientifically is a proven way of getting you past that fear?
Facing it.
Exposure therapy, right? Yeah, facing it. You probably don't go full head gung ho into it, but gradual exposure. And they always talk about pretty much any fear, if you do it systematically and logically, you can expose yourself to it and get past it. And I had to learn to do the same with anxiety, because it got to a point where I broke, like I think a lot of people have, and I said I've developed this really severe sleep anxiety on January the 16th this year. And it just started from a few nights bad sleep, and it perpetuated into this, what was somnophobia. So literally all day, 24/7, I was in constant fight or flight mode, petrified that I wouldn't get sleep. It was just 24/7. Hence why I didn't sleep for 2 weeks, until eventually I got into sleeping meds, which allowed me to get some sleep.
Yeah.
And then started the fluoxetine that helped try to, I guess, bring a bit of rationale back, and then made me open to this other stuff. But basically what I had to learn to do is you'll hear mindfulness come around a lot. And now I always say I'm not a pseudosciencey person. I know mindfulness is not a pseudoscience. I know very well in literature it's very much seen as a very, very positive thing. But up until now, it always felt pseudoscience and spiritual, until I learned the science of what it's really there to do. And I had to embrace that. And that's what the fluoxetine helped me do, kind of be open to it and learn. Once I learned the science, I clocked onto it. And effectively, what I learned to do was expose myself to those anxious thoughts and be okay with them. And I think Deepak Chopra talks about something similar, and people who do mindfulness really well talk about this. Not your random YouTube yoga person or whatever, but neuroscience. The guy who wrote the Chimp Paradox and stuff like that. They'll talk about this.
Steve Peters.
You've got to learn to observe your thoughts.
Yeah.
And I always thought that's easy for you to say when you're in it. Like, what you do. But I realize what they mean now. I totally just clicks, because you've got to, that's not something you can do. You have to learn it to skill. It's like playing an instrument. And the way you teach your brain to be able to do that was through mindfulness. And so what I had to do was go towards bed at night. Sheer panic would set in. Panic attacks. I was having 3 panic attacks every single day through it. And basically get into bed and go, right, I'm not going to fight you. I'm not going to logic you out. I'm not going to write you down on a journal and try and diffuse it. I am going to completely open my soul to experiencing it. And had to sit there and let the sweat hit you and let the cortisol and the adrenaline get your heart doing this, and don't judge it, don't do anything, like just accept it as it is. And what they did is they taught you how to be mindful on focusing on your breath, not to calm you down. I realize it's got nothing to do with calming you down, but in order to teach your brain how to focus. And then once you do that, then you put yourself in the situation where the panic is setting in and you create that fear response. And I learned that by changing my habits, so I stopped having caffeine after midday, I stopped having my toast before bed, I stopped doing all of that because I had to get sleep. I realized by doing that, I was creating the habit worse because I was reinforcing to my brain something was wrong. And I learned, your amygdala learns this, the amygdala of your brain learns this, it listens. So when you suddenly change your habit, you've created a fear response somewhere, somewhat irrationally, and then the second you go, oh God, I've got to do everything I can to stop it, and you throw everything at it, your amygdala learns it was right to be scared.
Yeah.
Because you're reinforcing it. So every time it comes to bed, where you used to for the last 20 years have toast before you go to bed, and now you don't, it's kind of going, yes, something's wrong. And so the fear response kind of perpetuates. And so what I had to learn was you learn how to truly teach your brain how to be able to focus on one thing. It's nothing to do with calming yourself down, nothing at all. Just be able to focus on your breath or a thing in the sense, something in the distance. Then as you learn that, get yourself into that panic mode and just let it happen. Don't fight it, don't logic it out. Go on, Becca.
Now, I have to step in here and say that I've got a couple of questions swirling, but I'm going to just say this. Now, Niall is very much underplaying here and making it sound very, very simple. I'm just going to say that when I recently saw him face to face, the difference I could see just in his general demeanour from 6 months ago was unbelievable. He looked like all his worries had gone. So much more relaxed, so much happier. So obviously I started picking his brains, knowing that he would have gone to the very depths of research onto this subject to really get in amongst it.
Yeah.
And what he's the thing he's saying there about almost observing it, I've managed that twice now. First time didn't work. Second time, you know where you, so for me it tends to come out in sort of like a lot of tears and that sort of like emotion. So basically, you know, you're trying to fight it, and I basically just went, you know what, let it hit. The wave went again quite quickly, and I was quickly back to feeling absolutely fine, and I felt the calmest I've felt in a long time.
Wow.
And actually, I don't know whether it's still on the wave or what, but I've actually not had an episode since. This was only last week. But where he's saying there about the separating yourself, it sounds really difficult. I think he's made it sound very easy. It is well worth a try, because having only tried it twice, completely different experience to experience anxiety rather than being anxious. It's almost like it's an emotion rather than you.
Yeah, and this is what I realize mindfulness is there to teach you, and why it can be so misused. It's like, forget trying to calm yourself down, forget trying to ease anxiety or ease stress, which is how it's sold, I think, from a lot of people. Bugger all to do that. No, it's teaching your brain a new neural pathway of a new habit. It's a skill of being able to be in a situation and just focus on something.
Yeah.
Sounds, and it is. What I would say is it's hard to experience, but it's actually quite simple to get you to retrain your brain to do it. And once you learn mindfulness, so I had to do that for a couple of weeks in the day when I wasn't anxious or just sitting there, then started doing it towards night and being able to do it in a bit more of a difficult situation, and then basically fully letting it hit you. And you'll hear neuroscientists and psychiatrists talk about you have to learn to separate yourself, your thoughts and your emotions from you. And I realize mindfulness is what teaches your brain how to do that. Now, and Becky, like you said, it will never work the first few times because you're going in with a goal. You need to get rid of the goal. Like you're going in going, oh, I'm panicking. Right, I'm going to try something to calm it down. No, you're not going to try something to calm it down, which is what you did the second time, which is you weren't trying to accomplish anything.
Almost
you just
step
kind
back,
of went,
step back, let
you know
it happen.
Go for it, because you weren't trying to accomplish anything, and that was the crux of it. And
you know that makes a lot of sense actually, because I think back to when I was having therapy, and we got onto the subject of mindfulness, and I was like, okay, and I think I was lost on it when the suggestion was to get used to mindfulness, start like trying to do it when I was brushing my teeth. And I was like, okay. And like, just don't think about anything. Just, what does the toothbrush feel like? What, and I'm like, what? And I did give it a go, maybe because I had that skepticism beforehand. Maybe I didn't,
exactly the same as me.
Fully to it, but actually where you're saying, Becky, that example from you, that, and I get that, it will take time to get used to doing that and training yourself almost to do that. It makes me think so often that when I can feel a massive build up, and then and there's so many things whizzing around my head, because actually Niall mentioned medication a little while ago, and there's a point there. But before I started medication, I would be exactly the same, Becky, where I could feel it come in and I would just be an emotional wreck. Now, medication for me has almost stopped all of that emotion. So I still feel it, but I can't cry. I just can't do it. But what happens to me is I feel that build up, and like everything tenses. Like even my face, like everything, my teeth grip together. And at times I'm it's even like the sound that comes out, and I'm really like that. Or and I don't know what you'd describe it as, but like I'll almost have a vision of what's going to happen, as it like almost catastrophizing, but like, oh my god, something bad's going to happen, and then I almost have to like physically shake myself out of it, which sounds really bizarre. And there's so many times where my wife will have gone, are you all right? I was like, and I'd be like, yeah, why? And she went, well, you just like, like, and it's almost like a sharp movement of my head, almost just to try and shake it off, which I suppose, to your point, Niall, is that trying to fight it away rather than let it happen. But for me, I've certainly found that where previously my release would be emotion, I don't have that release now, because of medication. So whilst the medication is doing some good things for me, there's also things where I can clearly see actually this is having an impact on that, and what is my release, so and it's almost that go into your own space and it's
well, I guess this is the thing that I've learned is, so everything you're saying now is even fine words I'm hearing now that I would have used 6 months ago and I don't anymore. So you like release yourself from it, or kind of shake it off. I'm like, the crux of everything I learned was teaching your brain to realize your thoughts aren't facts; they're just thoughts.
Yeah.
And the same goes with sensations. Sensations aren't anything other than your perception of them.
Yes.
So as I said, you get the knot in the stomach again. And initially, when I'm doing this thing and I was learning it and learning, with this first, what I would do several months ago or some months ago, you get that knot in your stomach, and then you'd be like, oh god, right, it's starting. Oh, okay, what am I going to do? And then catastrophizing. What if I don't sleep? What if this happens? And then before you know it, you're sweating. And then, as you say, you're desperate to try and fight it, or you said you want to release it. And for me now, I've realised I'm not there to release it anymore. And the biggest advice I would give that I learned is talk to it. Talk to it. I now have an alter ego, which is his name's Seth. And so whenever those thoughts or anxieties to do with that thing, and it still took time, but you just keep doing it and retrain your brain. That so before, where I would change my habit, I would start panicking and I go, oh God, I'm panicking again. Yeah, I'm panicking. Not my brain's panicking or not Seth's panicking. I'm panicking. My thoughts and sensations are me, and therefore I perpetuate it. And then when you do that and you start going, oh God, this is awful, your brain listens to you, and and your amygdala learns it is awful, right? And so it will continue to do it. The second you start, I started kind of going, oh, hello, Seth. Right, you've come back again. You're going to haunt me for tonight. Tell you what, mate, there's room on the bed. Come on, right? And yes, and I'd have to stop thinking, oh, this is going to be bad. No, it's just going to be another thing. It's going to be another sensation. And Seth can come down on the bed next to me and just lie there. And you know what? If we're going to stay up all night, Seth, we're going to stay up all night, and that's fine. Whatever. I'm not going to die. And so you do that over and over and over and over again. Your brain listens because it's and generally the final pivotal point for me was after it took several weeks, but every single time it got easier and easier and easier. And I realized without even thinking, thoughts and sensations I was observing now. I wasn't part of them. They're like, oh, they're over there. There they are. And they can just, that's what mindfulness taught me. It wasn't to calm me down or do that. It taught my brain how to be able to observe and experience. And now the thought or fear is there, and it's not me anymore. It's just something that flutters by. And now the tipping point was one day after several weeks of good sleep. One night I started having a bit of a panic again. Just that thought came in of what if you don't sleep again and you go back into it. And again, that panic set in. And straight away, without any hesitation, I just went, oh, Seth, I haven't seen you in a while, right? I'll tell you what, we've been through this for how many weeks now? I don't know. I've kind of missed you, actually, in a way. It's been interesting, but tell you what, come on in. If we don't sleep tonight, we don't sleep, we'll have a chat. And honestly, I genuinely kind of felt my brain go, oh, well, if you're not worried, I'm not worried.
I've got a question for you. I've got a question for you, and this might be for you as well, Dave, actually. It is. Having the Lean Six Sigma knowledge and past, and like I'm thinking, the fact that I live and breathe it, did you find it first now, till you got the hang of that you instantly went into diagnosis? Right, why am I feeling like this? What's the cause? What's the root cause? That sort of thing.
No,
and do you
because
do that
I was
as well,
in the
Dave?
same panic state that you were describing, in that you can't get out of it.
No, but after you got out of it,
yeah,
did you
in a sense. Well, for me, it was learning the science of it and learning how what did click with me with Lean Six Sigma. At level 6, I talk about neuroplasticity. When I talk about building a CI culture, people always ask, and I specialize in that bit, and I just never connected the dots. They always ask, how do you get people to change their behavior? And I go, actually, it's not as hard as you think, but it's a lot of effort. And the easy way of doing it is a kata. Get someone to do the same habit, the same routine every day. I always teach them it's easier to act your way to a new way of thinking than think your way to a new way of acting. And you demonstrate this when you teach a kid to walk, right? You don't persuade them that walking's a good thing. You put them up on their feet and you let them walk, and they will fall over. Falling over is part of the process. Yeah. And then you pick them back up again, and it's fine. And you don't overreact, and you don't go, oh my God, you've just bumped a knee on a bit of carpet. You kind of go, it's carpet. I know it's not hurt. Get back with your feet. We'll try again. And before you know it, they start walking and they start acting their way to a better way of thinking. And I teach this at level 6, and I suddenly clicked with how the brain develops neural pathways, which is what I teach about how to get people into behavior. I realized the same thing applied to your emotions and thoughts. And that all I had to do is I was retraining that neural pathway of panic. I was training it by getting panicked and letting it happen,
keeping it strong,
and trying to fight it, and changing my habits by going, what about this medication? What about if I try this? What about if I don't have caffeine? And I was retraining that pathway of there's something wrong, fear it. And my brain was listening to it. So the second I go, okay, forget all of that. Go back to my normal habits, and stick to it and learn what it is. And I'll start to learn all it is there's a neural pathway that I've not used, which is to observe your emotions, and they're not me. They're not the same person as me. I just needed to train it, and mindfulness was how I trained it, not what got me out of it. It's the thing that trained that path, and that path now. So we learned this news today with the land registry. Huge, big problem in that sense. And straight away, I've just said it there, but my brain kind of went, well, no, it's not a big problem. It's just a problem. If I say it's a big problem, it's a big problem. If I say it's just a problem, it's just a problem. And now that thought goes through my head of what if, and I kind of go, oh, hello, what if thought. All right, there you are. Okay. Yeah, there's probably some of that, but let's focus on what's in front of us now.
Yeah.
And I'm not doing breathing exercises. I'm not going, which, they said, no, the breathing exercise was just what I did to teach me how to focus. Now I don't need to do it. I don't need to meditate now, because I can just thought, oh, there you are, thought. Well, welcome, right? I'll see you later, all right? Because now it's not important.
So the normals amongst us, as in people who aren't as highly intelligent and take on information the way you do.
I'm taking on so much here. I feel bad.
No. This is fantastic. I think that the meditation and the mindfulness you were talking about is a way of making sure to keep that recognition of those thoughts and that almost mini, not diagnosis, but recognizing when it's a thought or a feeling rather than being you.
Yeah,
definitely.
So I meditated in order to experience the thing I was afraid of, not to calm it down.
Yes,
that was the thing that flipped the switch for me. Because you expose yourself to the fear, and I soon began to realise that knot in your stomach. Oh, and I'm starting to panic. I'm going, well, I've had knots in my stomach when I've had something that was a bit sour. Okay, so nothing's changed there. It's all that's changed is my weird delusion on the fact that one of them's negative and one of them's just to do with something I'll put in my mouth. Then I'm sweating and I'm going, okay, now I'm seeing the sweating is really bad. But we've all gone for a run and sweated like hellfire, probably more so than when we're anxious. So that's the same sensation. All that's changed is my perception of that situation. And because your thoughts are you and your feelings are you, and you put it all together, and then you soon realize you teach your brain that those things together are a bad thing. For me, that's the difference. Anxiety is not a bad thing anymore. I'm sure it can be. It might not be nice necessarily, but it's not a bad thing anymore. It's a friend. I can embrace it with open arms and go, thanks for looking after me. I know you're just looking after me. And those sensations I can feel in other situations, but I've now not got so much a negative delusion on them as to make them negative. They're not negative anymore. They're just things.
Dave, how much
Becky,
is your mind blown by all of that?
I'm still trying to think about the word that had elasticity in it. So
neuroplasticity.
See, I didn't even get that bit right.
Oh no, it comes from the same word. So.
As soon as you started going down that road, I thought, I'm out. I am out. No, but actually, when I think about it, and there's certain things. So your question kind of made me think, Becky, about certain things, and actually, where you say, about embracing it almost and facing it, and that's almost like this. This is a part of that. So many people are so afraid to talk openly about the things they experience, certainly from a mental health point of view. And actually, I think back to the very first time I started talking openly about it, which was around February, March time last year. I think. I don't know. Time flies with all these lockdowns and stuff in between. So the last 2 to 3 years seem to be blended into one. But I think it was around the beginning of last year. And like as that's gone on and on, I think there's a lot of people that would sit and go, "Oh, well, you're just really comfortable to do that." Well, I'm not every time. So even coming onto these, and one of the reasons that I was adamant that from my side, I wouldn't want to come to any of these and prep is because that would feed my anxiety. So I know that if I can come on and go, let's just have a discussion and see where it goes. If people like it, great. If they don't, then it's almost like a form of therapy for me, because actually, recognizing some of this. And actually, I think back to, when Niall said about caffeine. I mean, I don't really do hot drinks, but I did used to like drink a lot, so I used to self-medicate a lot through alcohol. And I made the decision last August to stop drinking. Originally for 30 days, but I've carried on since and still going now. Um, and I've never said I'll not drink again, because again, as soon as I started to think like that, I'm like, oh my God, that feels like forever. What happens if I do? I've let myself in. So you overthink it. So now, weirdly, like in my journal at the top, I write alcohol experiment day and whatever the day is. So then I always know, that actually I've just made the decision today that I'm not going to drink. And when you talk about kind of letting that anxiety kind of come in a little bit, and rather than trying to fight it and push it away, for me, drinking alcohol was my way of pushing it away, fighting against it. I can't let people see that actually I'm really struggling. Oh my word, people are used to me being the center of attention, the life and soul of the party. So and it wasn't until a friend's wedding in the August, and my wife left for about an hour. She walked out, um, and when she came back, I said, well, where did you go? And she went, I now know why you do what you do. I was like, what do you mean? And she went, you do all these things for other people. She said, and I just can't watch it. And it's really stuck with me, because weirdly, and I don't mean to make light of it, but I don't remember a huge amount from that day, because it was a very long day, and this was probably in the evening. But I remember that conversation really clearly, and that stuck with me, and that's the thing that made me go, do you know what, actually, I'm going to like look into my relationship with alcohol and why it's there, and why I do what I do. um and actually from that point of reading the book that I read, I've not drunk since, and that conversation replays quite a lot. um and it's funny, how certain things like that happen, how you find them, how you make those decisions. And for a large period of time, my wife was convinced I was having like an early midlife crisis, because I'd gone, oh, I'm gonna go and talk to the world about mental health, and oh, I'm gonna not drink, and oh, I'm gonna change job at the same time. And the only thing I was missing was a sports car and a younger model. But it was almost like, to her, she was like going, where's all this come from? um but I think it's that realization, and for me, a lot of the things that I do for my children. And I look and go, wow, am I a really good example? And there's certain things where you go, God, that's horrendous. Um for example, the pictures and stuff and the WhatsApp videos after a night out, and you just like, oh my word. And it's like, that's not the right thing, for me to do. I'm 41 years old now. I've done that stuff, and actually now I need to do the things that I think are going to look after me. So whilst I do still get massive like impact from anxiety, I don't have that like I used to, where it would be enhanced because my answer was, I'm gonna have a drink then, because that'll just take it all away. And actually, it didn't. It made it worse. And it will vary for everybody. For me, it made me do horrendous things. After a ridiculously long period of time, it made me start going back into a world of like self harm and that sort of stuff. But on the surface, no one would have ever thought that, or seen it, or questioned it. But for me, that was almost the point of going, I can't cope with this anymore. I need to I need to make the pain go somewhere else. So I'm going to drink. And then when that wouldn't work, you go, oh my God, well, I'm now going to do something physically so the pain goes away. But then that takes you into a whole different world where people then, if people are aware, obviously I live with my wife, so, and she, straight away people go, so do you not want to live? And it's like, no, I do. It's not about that. It's about, trying to find a way of dealing with all of this that's actually, really impacting me.
The release, like
yeah,
you were saying,
absolutely,
like
yeah,
getting that
yeah.
release.
But then, I started to realize that, actually anxiety add alcohol equals self-harm for me. That's not right. I need to do something to break the cycle, and it started from that conversation with my wife, you know.
Mm.
And it's weird because, and it may feel extreme, but that's one of the reasons why I had all my arm tattooed last year, is
Really?
because I got to a point of going, I can't keep like harming, so actually I need to do something that almost substitutes it, but something that I want to do, so
Mm.
it's something I'd always wanted. So it wasn't just a spare of the moment thing, because blimey, unlucky. But that for me was a way of kind of dealing with it, and coping with it. So I think a lot of what you've said, Niall, has kind of resonated with me in a way that maybe I didn't realize.
I learned it through the Chin Paradox and something called The Sleep School by Dr. Guy Meadows. And he goes through this, he does acceptance commitment therapy. That's how I kind of learned it. But building on yours, I guess I was going to have two questions. One of them I'm sure was very profound, but it seems to have gone amiss. I guess, yes, I'm sure that will come back to you. But my other one, I guess then, and I guess this is two pronged from both the perspective of the person who is anxious and perhaps the people around them. Based on that, then, how important do you think that conversation was in the grand scheme of things? That moment where your wife walked away and asked about it, is it, do you still think you would have hit that epiphany at some point had that conversation have not happened?
No. And do you know, I don't think I've ever told her this, but I, like, and it will sound really cheesy, but honestly, I think that conversation was life changing.
Mm. Not
Because
cheesy. Makes sense.
I mean, yeah, alcohol has been like a part of my life for as long as I can remember. Some people can, like, take it or leave it. For me, if I was out, then I was out.
Mhm.
So that wedding that I spoke about, for example, we went out the night before, but even before that, because I knew we were staying down there for 2 days, I'd pre-planned. We had morning drinks ready for me to take in the car, for the lads that were the passengers, and that was at like 9 o'clock in the morning. So it's almost, you get to the point where you do those things, but I think it becomes such a part of me and who I was and what I thought I was, because then you start having those fears of, well, this is what people expect. This is what people want to see,
Mm.
And then when I made a decision to stop drinking for a period of time, which now has just carried on, my first thought wasn't about how much better will this be for me. My first thought was, God, what are people going to think of me? God, what are people going to say? What
Yeah.
about, will people change how they are? And, the majority have been really supportive. There's been the odd thing, where people have gone, oh, we shouldn't go there because obviously you don't drink. And it's like, well, they still serve soft drinks, and, you can go to it. And as I found out in Cambridge a couple of weeks ago, you can go to bars and have mocktails, which was amazing.
Yeah.
So, it absolutely was life changing. I was stuck in a massive spiral that was only going one way, you know. Um, because whilst I was running and stuff like that, the running was a real short term release. The anxiety was there all the time. And the alcohol, just, I thought it was helping, but actually what it was doing was just making it
Fueled it.
even worse and
Yeah.
even worse and even worse. And then it got to the point where, like I say, I'm not proud to say it, but for me, it did lead to that, self-harm again. And for me, and there was such a long period of time, I'm talking years and years and years, since I'd done it previously. And it was like, bloody hell, and it was that conversation where we were at the time, and then you just go, what are you doing? What are you doing? There I am talking about mental health openly, and I'm like suffering massively
Mm.
inside. So yeah, it's I'd like to think that there would have been an epiphany moment, but honestly, I don't think there would have been.
I guess 'cause that's what I was, the one thing I was thinking before that you reminded me of. This isn't a question per se, but I've always wondered, and just like that, it's going again. Flipping heck, right? Just as I'm saying it. God, that's so bizarre. Clearly doesn't want me to say it. But I guess the other thing I was going to say then is I'm also thinking this. So if anyone's watching this back, thinking, yeah, perhaps they've got their own struggles, but actually they're more looking at someone else next to them that have got their struggles. Does that kind of suggest that the answer is it's better to speak up than do nothing? And if that's the case, was there anything in particular that, say, your wife said to you, or how she approached it, that made you kind of perceptive to it? Like, if someone else is watching this and thinking, I've got someone near me who I care about who's doing that, how do they start that conversation? Because by the sounds of it, I think we're all probably in agreement that the conversation was vital to creating
Oh,
something. So,
absolutely.
how would someone else go about doing that, I guess? Or
Well, and I think dependent on the individual would, it's going to be that there's probably a couple of ways. There'll be some people that would absolutely welcome that conversation, and would need it, need that safe space to kind of open up. And I when I made the decision to stop drinking and stuff, I remember like having a conversation with my wife in the kitchen doorway. Actually, I was literally about to take the dog for a walk, and I just got to the point where I was really struggling with all of it and going, I need to say something because I need her to understand and I need her to be there for me, but at the same time, I don't want to be a disappointment. So I was then really worried about what's her reaction going to be. But actually, it was the best thing I could have done. It really was. Because I'm not saying that she could understand, because I think, only the people going through it can really understand. But what she could do is she could have an awareness to then start to see behaviors, start to see how I was. If there were days when clearly I wasn't in a great place, then actually, just to know that she was there, but to let me have my own space, because otherwise, for me, I would become quite snappy and that sort of stuff. I almost got to the point where I knew when I wanted to talk, so therefore I'd be the one to say, hey, I'm really struggling. But I think to have that initial part is really tough. It is really tough. But whether it's a partner or a family member, for me there's been a couple of really really close friends that have been vital to me, right from the point that I was in a bad place a couple of years ago, and weirdly, like my oldest friend in the world, um I sat down and spoke to him about it under the influence of alcohol, because that's the only way that I felt I could do it. But since then, I can talk to him about any of it, and I know that I'm not going to be judged. So I think making sure that you provide that safe space, that safe environment, and just it's that lack of, people are so conscious that they're just going to be criticized or thought of differently, but actually just taking that judgment stuff away. you know don't overthink how someone's got to that point. Think about how can you make sure that you're there for them to stop that point carrying on.
Be supportive, open and honest, isn't it?
Yeah,
Which are the
Yeah.
hardest things to be.
Yeah.
But
I mean, there's
yeah,
a more common theme now of what is it? But people don't actually want advice for their issues. They just need someone who listens without judgment. Um,
definitely.
I get,
absolutely.
I guess. But like
Yeah,
many people, your instinct is to want to try and fix or offer something, and actually, it's probably not what's right for the situation. Depends on the
Yeah.
situation, but again,
Yeah.
that's probably
yeah,
not right for anxieties. That's probably right for worries, but probably not right for
yeah.
anxieties.
No,
um,
absolutely, absolutely. And I think um, it's funny, isn't it? Because every time we talk, we always say, "Blimey, we could talk all day or all night." And
Yeah.
I remember when we spoke about this session last week or the week before, and we said, "Oh, we'll just do like a half hour, like touch on anxiety." And for me, this is the whole point of why you come, or why I like the idea of coming unprepared, because you don't know where it's going to take you. You know, and these conversations are vital. Whether people learn stuff, you know, whether people are better educated, you know, take stuff away. The one bit for me is if there's just someone that listens to any of these and goes, some of that's me,
Mm.
you know, I'm not alone, because that's what I needed at the time and I couldn't
Yeah.
really find it. So if someone can do that, you know, then that's amazing. You know, I think you know, we're all really honest in the fact that we're not doctors, we're not medical experts. Niall's clearly more educated than we are, but you know, but at the same
Not at
time,
all.
you know,
I talk
these
absolute
are
rubbish for the most part.
but these are lived experiences. You know, these are things that you know we all kind of go through, and I think it takes a lot to sit and say some of this stuff out in the open. So, you know, massive
Definitely.
testament to you guys.
And you.
Yeah,
Right
So
back at
100%.
you, by the
And
way.
thank you
yeah,
for sharing all of that. Honestly,
Exactly.
I'm honoured. I'm honoured to be part of the person you've shared it to. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
and
Well, it is. You know, it's important from my side that you know I do feel like I'm getting to a point where I can be really open and honest about, you know, a lot of this stuff. There's still a lot of stuff that I can't be, you know, but one day I hope I can be. But it is that piece of, you know, sharing experience in the hope that other people can connect, can seek guidance, advice, help, whatever it be, you know, or just to know that, you know what, a load of people can look great on the outside. You know, but
A lot
actually you don't know
going
what's
on.
going on behind. Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
so
absolutely.
I was going to say on that note then, I guess it's follow on because I've always quite liked doing this, and I think I probably did it in the second episode where I wasn't part of the team, but just as a guest when you kind of said it'd almost be a drop mic moment, is maybe getting into a little bit of a habit of this is between us three at the minute, but you can do it with guests going forward. But you've probably touched on it there, but I guess if each of us would say one thing on the theme of anxiety, it can be advice or something you think is just an interesting fact or something just useful information. What do you think that one thing would be for each of us?
Oh, can I go last?
Damn.
Like you also partly had one in that sense
Yeah.
in a sense. I know it wouldn't be the one you necessarily chose, but almost seeing you really don't know what's going on behind it. I guess, isn't it?
Yeah,
I'm not trying to
absolutely.
steal it off you there, but you
Come
can go
on
last
then.
if you want.
Come on then. I think for me, as what I would have always described myself as a chronic worrier and like that anxiety and always worried about what people think of me. If you're feeling like you may have anxiety, speak to somebody you trust about it because it can literally change your life.
Mm.
It certainly did for me. So there we
Yeah.
go.
Just reach
Spot
out in
on.
some way. Yeah, yeah, and I think
Go
mine
on then,
has
Niall.
says, yeah, no, I think mine would be is remembering there's a difference between accepting something and resigning to something. And when you learn to accept feelings and sensations and thoughts as just that, sensations and thoughts, anxiety can be actually a friend. I never thought I'd say it, but anxiety can genuinely be a partner. So my thing is what I've learned to do is lean into the fear. It's hard mentally to do that. And it takes a little bit of time, but you can teach your brain, lean into the fear and know that anxiety can be a partner, not an enemy. Yeah.
Like it. Like it.
Go on then, Dave.
Come on, Dave.
Okay.
You've
So
bided
for
time it
me,
long enough now.
I know, yeah. I've been racking my brain. So, you know, I know I looked like I was listening, but I was
Yeah.
really thinking. No. No, for me, and I use this quite a lot with a lot of things when I talk about, you know, mental health and stuff. But from an anxiety point of view, you know, I think it's really important that whilst you recognise it, the fact that I struggle with anxiety doesn't mean that I can't be a good dad. I can't be a good husband. You know, I can't be a good member of my family. You know, I can't be a decent member of society. You know, it doesn't define who I am. It's
Yeah.
just something that, like and I talk about this sort of stuff quite a lot when I say I'm not an expert. I'm just a guy that's gone through some stuff, that for me, it doesn't take away the fact that I can still be what I want to be. So
Exactly.
And I think that is a beautiful moment to draw an end to that one, and I think that's beautifully said.
absolutely,
So thank you both.
absolutely. No, thank you.
Thank you.
And yeah, this is probably our longest one, or even though it was going to be our shortest one. But I think more news to come then on episode 4. Who we have got a new guest for, so
Ooh,
news to follow.
excellent.
Exciting.
Fantastic. Right. So we'll go for it then, and hopefully we'll be on YouTube Live by then.
Excellent. Brill.
Nice.
Thank you very much, both. Episode
Thank
3
you
of Not
too.
Another Mental Health Podcast.
And
Perfect.
again, I had so many more questions.